Neely Fuller Jr. Neely Fuller Jr., welcome back to WOL.
Thank you.
You know, we've been discussing hate, and this was perpetrated, precipitated on what happened with the gorilla. I'm sure you saw the story about the gorilla and the little boy got into the compound where the gorilla was, and then all of a sudden this outrage started on the child's parents after they found out the child's parents were black. Before they didn't care, and right now they don't seem to care about the child's condition. But all they care about is the fact that these are black parents and they have not, somehow they lack parenting skills. That's why this child managed to get into that compound with a gorilla, and they have to shoot the gorilla, so they're all upset about the gorilla. Harambe is his name. I'm just wondering, how do you process all that? Because we were talking about hate, still a lot of hate for black folks. How do we deal with it?
Well, black people have been the object of ridicule and then been despised ever since the beginning of what somebody conceived as the system of white supremacy, as a concept, as a way of running the world, as the best way to get things done in the most efficient manner and based on a very efficient principle. It turned out to be the most efficient principle for getting things done ever thought of, and that is to mistreat people, dominate rather, and mistreat people based on color. And it turned out to be something that we call racism and or white supremacy, which turned out to be the only form of functional racism that there is. And it's very efficient when it comes to getting things done in a material fashion. And the cost of getting these things done is that people are made into throwaway people. And the throwaway people are basically anybody who has color in his or her skin, and particularly if that color is very, very dark.
All right, hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. We got to take a quick break, look at the traffic, and we come back. I'll let you finish your thought. I also got some folks who want to speak to you. You too can join the conversation with Neely Fuller Jr. Reach out to us at 800-450-7870.
Uniform and your ribbons and you're fighting for democracy over there in the South Pacific. You know what? And get out of my face. Waiting on his more or less connection at the answer. That's your welcome home animal, secondary animal at that, behind the dog. And don't you ever forget it. That hasn't changed much. So, a lot of people look at a black person nowadays, 2016. A lot of white supremacists look at a black person and look at their dog and say, which one would I save in a crisis?
You know what? And we can just look at what happened with Michael Vick. They were ready to lynch Michael Vick, for how he treated his dogs, by the way. But they never think about Trayvon, how he got treated. So I guess you're right there, Neely Fuller Jr.
Well, after all, in the movie, Godfather 1, what did the character say? Or something like that in the railroad station. So he's there in his uniform with his ribbons and whatnot, and he just kind of turned to him, trying to be friendly, and he says, well, how are things? That's what my cousin reported that he asked this one. It's shown all over the world over and over again. I look at it over and over again because I like to cement that lesson. And that is, hey, we're going to sell crack cocaine to the black people.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Wilson has credited Neely Fuller as saying that if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, then everything else you think you understand will just confuse you. Having said that, we're discussing about hate, and we, specifically about what happened with the gorilla Harambe when they found out that the parents were actually black, and now they're getting a lot of heat. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. Go back to Michael in Columbus. Michael, your question for Neely Fuller.
My question would be to Mr. Fuller: does the gun that the white man invented, does that put fear in our hearts that we do the crazy things we do, that he would kill us as he's killed everything else and hung in his hallway? And the other thing, have black men and women resorted to the white man's God, which is money? Money has become the black man's God now.
Well, if I understand the question, I'll answer the last question first, and that is, no, the God of the white supremacists is not money, in my opinion. I'm just giving my opinion. The God of the white supremacists are the white supremacists. And they do believe that there is a creator maybe somewhere, but they try not to think about that too much, because they like to think, like they said, like many of them, I won't say all or even most, but many of them, a few years ago, some people may remember it, they said God was dead. They had a slogan, God died. So, if God is dead, if you follow the logic, somebody has to take God's place. That's the law of compensation. Somebody has to replace that void. So, who best to replace God if God is dead than the most competent people among the planet? The people who have conquered all other people, and the people who have become most powerful and most looked up to, and people who fear most, who are most feared. And so that would be a white person, not all, but that white person who believes in the most powerful political and religious system ever thought up in the minds of people in recorded history, and that is what? The system of white supremacy. And so, therefore, they take the position that, yes, give a certain number of black people guns, 9mm, one of Adolf Hitler's favorite cartridges, the 9mm Luger. That came out of Germany. It fit the old Luger pistol, the pistol 08 called the Luger, and also the pistol called the P-38, pistol 1938. That was the year it was invented, called the Walther, pistol 38. And it was put in the chambers and in the magazines of hand-carried pistols, and also used in what they call the submachine gun that some sergeants in armored divisions in the SS used, so I understand, among the Nazis in World War II. Now, after so-called World War II, when crack cocaine was put into the hands of black people, the white supremacists knew what was going to happen. First, you give them the drugs as a form of making money, because you're not going to allow them to make money any other way. And then, along with the drugs, that is only when you give them the drugs first, then you put in their hands right after that the 9mm Luger pistol in some form or another. Not the old Luger that the Germans had in World War II, like the Luger or the Walther P-38, but all of the pistols that carry the P-38 cartridge, the Luger cartridge, the 9mm cartridge. And that has had a wonderful toe of expression, according to the white supremacists, among the black people of the Northwestern Hemisphere. In other parts of the world, it is the AK-47, all over what they call Africa. You can find in many villages and whatnot a barefoot black person with the AK-47 assault rifle. And he's riding on the back of a pickup truck, doesn't have shoes on his feet, but he's got a very expensive AK-47 assault rifle. And he's on his way to the next village to slaughter the people there that look like him. Why? Because he's been taught that indirectly by the white supremacists and given the means, not given any food, any medicine, and if he's given some, just enough to get him to go to the next village and kill everybody in that village that looks like him and his mother. And this is going on all over the world as we speak. And who are the culprits behind it? Those white people, not all white people, but those white people who are the most powerful people on this planet, who believe in dominating and mistreating people based on color. They are the usual suspects because nobody else has that kind of power to do that type of thing except them.
All right, folks, 800-450-7876 to speak to Neely Fuller Jr. Here's the deal with Neely. You've got to use his logic to explain stuff, so you got to listen really, really keenly. Again, the number to call to speak to him is 800-450-7876. Go to Detroit, line 4. Yatunda is reaching out to us. Yatunda, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. I just wanted to say that I've always thought that Europeans have been on a quest of researching extinct animals because they are extinct. So they study like sciences and how to repopulate themselves the same way they're learning how to repopulate various other species within the animal kingdom. And like Francis Cress Welsing said, as far as black people are concerned, we're the most powerful people that can genetically annihilate them, which is the whole basis for racism, white supremacy, is genetic survival. So the black child didn't matter as much as the extinct animal because they put animals that they identify with because they are extinct. They put them above human beings.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond. Thank you, Yatanda. Neely Fuller? Is that correct?
That could be. That could very well be. There has to be a motivation for how white supremacy came into being in the first place. And that should be discussed at great length. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing discussed it all the time. If you're going to get to the genesis of any problem, get to the genesis of the problem. Genesis meaning, how did it all get started? And by whom? And for what ultimate reason? And for what functional reason? I've always dealt with the functional part. And in my book, the textbook for victims of white supremacy, I talk about what black people can do about it. That's what I concentrate on. But prior to that, it should be even white people should ask themselves, why did white supremacy come into being in the first place? How did racism get started in the first place, and for what ultimate reason? That question should be answered.
800-450-7876, line 5. Israel's waiting for us in Washington, D.C. Israel, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Edmonds.
No, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Oh, Fuller Jr. Oh, Mr. Edmonds is gone. Okay, one question that I wanted to ask is he was talking about hate.
Okay.
The question I want to ask, right? Being that he reads the Bible, he says from the beginning to the end. In the Bible, it also stated that the father says that he loves Jacob, but then he hates Esau. How does that come about? That's one question that I have for him. And then the next question that I have, I'll ask him that one first to see where he's
yeah, because that's a biblical question. That Neely Fuller is not a biblical scholar, but I thank you for your call, Israel. 800-450-7876. Keep rolling. Stay in D.C. Let's go to line 6. Dr. Ed's waiting for us. Dr. Ed, you're on Neely Fuller Jr.
Very interesting topic. And to your guest, the Africans brought knowledge to this country. And you know that Edison did not invent the light bulb. He did not invent a light bulb that could withstand time. The thing fizzled out. You have to have high temperature. I'm a scientist retired from NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm the only one looking like me in the branch provide pictures of my scientists at NASA. And since I'm retired, I don't think they have any of that right now. But the thing is, I think this hatred is fear. And that the people who fear us, they see something in us they wish they had. Something we got they wish they had, Doctor. What's your opinion on that?
All right, good question. Is it based on fear, this hatred, Neely?
Sure. Right. You don't hate anything that you don't have or not afraid of. I mean, if you think you can handle something very easily with no problem, whatnot, you don't hate what you can handle. In fact, you kind of laugh at it. All right. So I'm saying that the white supremacists started off, I guess, according to the evidence, having this great fear. But fear can be reduced by assuming power over the thing that you fear most. And that's what they have done successfully. Now,
all right. Hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. We got to take our last look at the traffic and weather in the DMV. Folks, you too can get in on this conversation with Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Welsing's mentor. Reach out to us, 800-450. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. He's got a book out. It's just called The Code. That's the short name, but before the end of the show, he's going to give us all the information to get the book, because then you'll be able to understand how to combat racism and white supremacy. As he mentioned, and as Dr. Welsing has told us all the time, that if you don't understand racism and white supremacy, then everything else that you think you understand will just confuse you. So, Neely Fuller Jr., I'll let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the traffic update.
Yes. And the white supremacists, they manufacture hatred because you have to do that. And you have, if you're going to dominate people and then mistreat them based on that domination and say that these people are eligible. You do admit that the people are really people, but you say they are a breed of people who are eligible to be mistreated. So you have to teach that to your offspring systematically over a period of time. You drum that into their heads over and over again. And you even drum that into the heads of the people that you're going to mistreat. You teach them, look at yourself in the mirror. You are nothing. You are nothing. You are nothing. You are something to be despised. Anything that looks like you, including your mother and your father and your neighbors, if it looks like you and it's moving around on this planet, you should despise it. Why? Because it is worthy of being despised. Why? Because it is dark. That's why. And anything in the form of a person that has dark skin should be despised. Say amen, boy. Say amen, girl, behind what I just told you. Anything that looks like it might be, just might be, in the form of a person, but that person has dark skin. The darker, the more that person or that thing that looks like a person is supposed to be despised. And by it being despised, you let it exist, but you let it exist with the understanding that it's supposed to be mistreated. If you tell it to do something and it doesn't do it, and it begins to run away from you, you shoot it. It's a thing. It's even something that you can't even describe as being on the level of a dog. Because after all, I mean, a dog does have some type of proportionate something that you can value, but this thing in the form of a person that you call a black person, you don't know what that is, except it's something you're supposed to if you are classified as white, and even if you're classified as black, you are supposed to despise that thing and not only express it in words every now and then, not so much in the modern days, but you certainly express it in your actions toward it. Put it last on your list of things that are supposed to be given any kind of constructive consideration. And this is the society that we're in, worldwide. And that's another thing. Stop talking about in the Northwestern Hemisphere. This is worldwide, always has been. White supremacy is everywhere. There's no place you can go where it doesn't reign supreme. That's what it means by supreme. That's everywhere, in every area of activity. Economics, they control it. If there's any people of color calling themselves having some kind of economic system that's not subject to the white supremacists, you're fooling yourself. Education, they hoard all the knowledge and have you come to them to get it. They have it set up like that. And they tell you how much of it you can get. And not only that, if you're a person of color, they tell you what you can use it for and what you better not use it for. And they got the muscle to back it up. And then that's economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And if you have color in your skin, they dominate your movements in all of these areas of activity, truth be told.
All right, let me interrupt you and say this then, Neely Fuller. Some people will say, well, what about Michael Jordan? What about Bill Cosby? Well, probably not Bill. What about, some of our wealthy, Oprah, our wealthier folks?
Okay, let's look at what about. What about these names you just mentioned, and what about the word that you attach to them? Wealthy. Wealth is determined in the system of white supremacy by whom? The usual suspects, the white supremacists, those white people who believe in dominating and mistreating people based on color. They determine what wealth is. Any black person walking around with a couple of $1 billion can have it taken away in a snap of a finger if the white supremacists decide to do so. Why? Because the white supremacists can decide whether that person that has the wealth can be taken away from here in the next 5 minutes, regardless of where he or she might be on this planet. They run the planet, including all of the so-called wealth on it. It's no such thing as a wealthy black person that they say, now I have money and the white supremacists can't touch me. You have just made the biggest mistake of your misunderstanding of the system that you were born in.
800-450-7876. Before I take a call for you, I got a tweet question. It says, in light of Michael Vick and the gorilla shooting, can you ask Brother Fuller if he thinks this white man will go to jail for killing these goats in Maryland? I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story. It was in the Washington Post. Three goats were found with their throats slashed in Maryland, in a park in Maryland, and they've caught a guy, and the guy's a white guy. So the question is, to you, Neely Fuller, do you think that this guy, in the wake of what happened to Michael Vick, think this guy will go to jail for killing the goats in Maryland?
I don't know. It depends on what the white supremacists decide. Like everything that black people do. It depends on what the white supremacists decide. Not all white people, but those white people who believe in dominating and mistreating non-white people based on color. That's what a white supremacist is. They're the smartest and most powerful people that this world has ever seen, if we believe in telling the truth. Now, there are some black people who have said to me, oh, that's not true. You're making that up. Then I ask a question. All right. If they are not, who is? No one has ever, in all the time I've been talking down through the years, answered that question, except some people have said, well, God is. I said, I wasn't talking about God. I was talking about people. I said, they're the most powerful people on this planet. I haven't had no takers on that, because the person who says that ain't so will turn right around and say, I got to go and find me a job. And I say, who are you going to ask for a job? And I will say that right now on the air. Where are the dark-skinned people looking for jobs right now who are in what we call the greatest continent, Africa? They're all trying to drive a cab where? In London, in Paris, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Let's tell the truth, folks. Let's stop lying to ourselves about where the power is on this planet. Let's stop kidding around. That's why we are called children. We don't want to face reality. And the first step towards solving any problem is to tell the truth about the problem that you got.
800-450-7876. Go to line 1. Lawrence is reaching out to us from the Metroplex, to the Arlington side of the Metroplex in Texas. Lawrence, your question for Neely Fuller. Is Lawrence there? I think we lost Lawrence. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's go to line 2. Mrs. Richardson is calling from Chevy Chase in Maryland. Mrs. Richardson?
Yes, thank you, dear. Yes, and good evening to this wonderful, courageous, great man, Dr. Neely Fuller. I've followed him since he's been, I guess, teaching. But he always says he can learn, and I think, I bless him that he doesn't think, he's so high over everyone, because he seems to be honest enough to say that he's willing to learn, and he's still learning. I appreciate that. And but what I mean is, Doctor, can you explain to me why is it that all of these people from all over the world, we got, like you're saying, it's been done by them to brainwash these people. But here in this country, could you tell me, are those poor white folks in Appalachia, aren't they just as much programmed and conditioned? I'm talking about these poor peasant whites that I didn't live too far from them. My home state, Kentucky, and I tell you, I've seen them every day, and they're just as brainwashed to this stuff and conditioned the way the slave master did the blacks. Could you speak to that? And thank you, Carl, so much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Richardson. And we got to take a quick break. Neely Fuller, I'll let you respond to Ms. Richardson's question on the other side. Folks, you too can reach out to us and join this conversation. We're discussing hate, discussing white supremacy, racism. If you want to raise a question, raise your hand by dialing us up at 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
DC's 1450.
1450 WOL.
We mentioned we'll kick it off at 4 on Saturday. We get on the way at noon, and we're going to go as long as until it's over. But anyway, if you want more information, you can go to the church, Union Temple Baptist Church. It's 1225 W Street. That's Southeast DC. That's between King and the Frederick Douglass Memorial in Anacostia. And the phone number over there is 202-678-8822. Now, if those of you who are inquiring about vendors, you call Tasha at 202-409-1366. Or if you're out of town and you want more information and tickets, go to PowerTalkSeries.com. You can pick up your tickets there. A bunch of folks from all over the country coming, so get your tickets. So let's go back to Neely Fuller Jr. now, and his question for Mrs. Richardson. A question that she asked about our poor whites, and she mentioned the ones in Appalachia. Are they as programmed to hate us, or are they as programmed against us as we are against each other?
Well, all white people are told by the white supremacists, those white people who believe in white supremacy, to believe in white supremacy and to practice white supremacy. And it has nothing to do with how much money you have or what kind of shack you live in or what kind of mansion you live in. If you're a white supremacist, you are a member of a world army. And in that army, you have people who have rank and you have people who are considered to be kind of low in rank and people in high in rank, but you're still in the same army. And this is the way it has to be looked at if you're going to be realistic about what is the system of white supremacy. What is it really? And how does it work? What is the structure of it? So there's no such thing as a poor white person in the system of white supremacy, if that white person embraces the ideology of white supremacy. That itself makes that white person rich in that white person's mind. Because that person, and some of them have said it, I might be barefoot, but I'm not one of you people. I'm not one of you people at all. I don't care what kind of college you went to. I don't care if you are like that President Obama, that black person that other white people allowed to be where he is, my brothers and sisters. They allowed him to be that. And even though I'm barefoot and I don't fly around in airplanes, I'm still better than he is. Why? Because I'm a white man, that's why. And that's one thing you people can't get through your thick skulls. That's the way we see the world. But you don't see the world the way that we see the world. And so that's why you're in the shape that you're in. Because I have the potential for going where I want to. The only reason I'm up in these hills is because this is where I choose to be. One of the main reasons being I choose to be here, even though I'm barefoot, is to be away from you. Because I don't want you up here with me. And this is one place where you are not likely to come. And I'm down with that. You don't understand our thinking at all, mister. With your black PhD, Harvard education, you don't understand the fundamentals of this world, and that is one fundamental, and that is the system of white supremacy. You are baffled by it, and we like to keep you that way.
Now, does that work for all whites? Do they practice this subconsciously, or do they practice it consciously? Because, you've got some white friends who will say, I'm not racist. And they, sometimes, John Brown, a white person like that. Are all of them in the same boat? That's my question.
Huge numbers of white people down through history since the beginning of the system of white supremacy have slaughtered each other. Over what? Over who's going to tell the black people what to do and what not to do. They had a so-called civil war about that very thing. The white supremacist mindset is not about whether white people suffer. It's whether white people are dominant over non-white people. See, the victims do not understand that at all. We don't understand that type of thinking. But it's a very peculiar way of thinking and a very powerful way of thinking. This question is often asked to me, white people kill each other and whatnot. You better believe they do. But look at it like this. It's like two brothers running a grocery store, both of them white. And there is a black person that works in the grocery store. His name is Sam. Take that for an example. He works back in the back stacking goods for the grocery store. The two brothers get into a knockdown, drag-out fight up in front of the store. In fact, one of the brothers calls on Sam to come and help him beat up the other brother. And then, after it's all over, the two white brothers, both of them white supremacists, they shake hands and they say, okay, did I teach you your lesson or not? And the other one says, well, I guess you did. But maybe if we have a dispute next time, I'll beat you. And then they both turn around and look at Sam and say, all right, Sam, it's all over. Get back to work. Now, if you look at it worldwide in just that simplistic term, you will understand more about white supremacy than you did before.
All right, 800-450-7876. Got a bunch of folks want to speak to you. Let's go to Don and call us out of the district on line 1. Don, you have a question for Neely Fuller?
Yeah, Neely Fuller, I'm kind of inquisitive about the whites trying to take over the world with white racism, especially people of color. What about China? You think they're going to slowly infiltrate them and whites be supreme over people of China? Well, I ain't gonna say Russia because they're white, but China, they have color. What do you think about that? I'm not gonna hold a line. I'll take it off of air.
All right, thanks, Don.
No, people have asked me about that, and I have thought about that. Now, so there's a big question mark there. Are the white supremacists allowing this? Well, when I look at people who call themselves Chinese in what they call the country of China, I see them carrying briefcases, wearing suits and ties where they used to wear a different type of uniform and all like that. So I'm saying, well, you have a little cultural influence there. In fact, you have a whole lot of cultural influence. And so the white supremacists are aware of this. But I've always said, history has shown since the beginning of white supremacy, when they allow someone else, particularly people of color, or white people who are not white supremacists, to get a little bit of power, they always have shown so far, it might not work out that way in the future, hopefully it won't, but they have shown so far that when they allow that, and they are allowing it, and nurturing it, actually they are helping along. They always got what you call in card playing, what? An ace in the hole. And people of color have sometimes thought that they were on a roll, just like a lot of black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere right now, among us, think that they own some kind of role sometime or another. Sometimes it's just individuals. Sometimes it's a little clique of individuals who, hey, we're broken free. We got it now. We're out. I mean, you know, we don't have anything to worry about now. I mean, we finally figured out how the system works, and we are working the system. Yeah, right. But so far, the white supremacists always pull something out from under the table to prove that you ain't going nowhere, boy. You should have known that when you even started down that road. If I let you go down the road, you better believe I know where the road is going to end, because I planned everything about you people long before you were born. And that's the way I continuously look at it. Now, it might not be healthy to look at it that way, but I say the record shows you better look at it that way, because black people, every time, have gotten blindsided when they thought that they were on a roll. They got hit from something out of nowhere. And sometimes the hit comes in a very subtle manner that we don't even know that we've been hit. The white supremacists are the shrewdest people for mistreating people that this world has ever seen.
All right, hold that thought right there. We got to take a quick break, and I got some folks who want to speak to you. If you're on hold, we'll get to you when we get back. Number to call to speak to Neely Fuller Jr., 800-450-7876. He says if you don't understand racism/white supremacy, then everything else you think you may understand will just confuse you. We'll take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. We'll get back to Neely Fuller in a moment. Just want to remind you, some of the folks are going to be stopping by in the next few days. James Lance Taylor is a poli-sci professor, one of the best in the country. He's going to chop up what's going on in California in the Democratic and the GOP race. Also, Mohammed the mortician out of New Jersey. He's the guy who's, after all these shootings, he has the one that has to put the deceased to bed. He's got some stories to share with you, so keep listening. Also, Ferguson's new police chief, Delrish Moss, is going to be here as well. 800-450-7876. A bunch of folks want to speak to Neely Fuller Jr. Before we do that, though, Neely Fuller Jr., can you give us the title of your book, the exact title, and how folks can get your book?
It's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. What those words mean are described in the book, but there is a complementary title to the main title, and that is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of white supremacy. If you don't consider yourself to be a victim of white supremacy, the book is not for you. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. But that site, if you go to it now, you will see that the book is temporarily out of stock. But that adjustment is being made. Plus, we're making some adjustments on the site itself. And so that won't be completed for another 2 to 3 weeks, I've been told, as of today, because there have been some glitches going on there and some adjustments that have to be made and some adjustments that I have to make to compensate for it. But the title of the book is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and action for victims, the individual victims. It's addressed to individual persons about what you can do each and every day about this thing called racism and or white supremacy. And go to the site, keep checking the site, producejustice.com. And sometimes within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I have been told as of today, then the volumes will be available and other information will be on that site. That's producejustice.com. Producejustice.com.
All right, 800-450-7876. Fred's been holding for a while. He's on line 2, calling from the district. Fred, you have a question for Neely Fuller?
This is Grant.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. I have 2 questions. First one is isn't, and in a lot of ways I was on his side because I think he earned the right to say it, but isn't Bill Cosby a perfect analogy of a black person who thought he was above, possibly above it all, and then the shrewd, as you said, the shrewd white supremacists destroyed him. And then secondly, a lot of people make comments about Obama, white folks have accepted him because he was light-skinned. But from my history, and looking at the history of white supremacy, to them, it doesn't matter, what your complexion is. Whether as long as you're black or a person of color to them, they still have contempt, regardless of what it is. Because, the one thing that's stuck in my mind about Obama that's never gotten out of my mind is that I had never seen a president be called a liar on national TV in the well of the Senate while he was in the middle of a speech. It was just incredible that these people had the audacity to do that. And don't they understand that you denigrate the office? Or does that mean nothing to them? That, okay,
right.
You may be
in interest of time, let's give him a chance to respond. We got a bunch of folks who want to speak to him. I thank you for your call. Neely?
No title means anything if it's attached to a black person in the system of white supremacy, except a title that is derogatory. And the title that is supposed to be one of prestige means absolutely nothing to a white supremacist. And the white supremacists are the people that dominate the entire planet of people of color. So titles don't mean anything to them. They are the masters of words. They invent these titles. So if they tell a black person, you're the president of the world, or that you are God, they'll say anything. They don't care. But they will treat you like you are a victim of white supremacy, because that's what the white supremacist system demands. You're always a victim, even when you don't know that you're a victim. In fact, that's when the system of white supremacy at its utmost refined stage, which is what you call the white supremacists give themselves medals for being able to practice white supremacy in such a manner that every black person will point to that white person and say, that white person couldn't be a racist. It's impossible. Not the way that white person goes about helping black people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's one thing you notice if you look around, and that is the system is always in place. The army of white supremacists believe in one thing, and that is everything is supposed to be sacrificed or be worked toward in order to support the system. As long as the system is in place, the little individual things that they do on a day-to-day basis here and there, they don't really matter. Keep the system in place. Don't endanger the system. And anybody, white or non-white, that looks like he or she may be a threat to the system is going to be in big trouble real quick.
All right, 800-450-7876. Go cross country to line 6. Deborah's calling us from Seattle. Deborah, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr. You have a question for him.
Yes, I do. So I truly understand now, after following Dr. Francis and also Neely, what the system is. And, I look at it all the time when I'm in everyday life. But one of the things I have a question about is, what is the difference? Like, I have problems because I have animals, but I do not place the value of life of a human being over an animal. So I don't, regardless of the situation, I don't care if the animal had to be taken out, it had to be taken out. But I have a pit bull, and I know there are other white people in my neighborhood that have pit bulls. But for some reason, they antagonize, they go to any extreme to call the pound or whatever on me. But I see all these white folks walking around with pit bulls. They don't ever get any kind of, I don't ever see them get harassed like I get harassed. And then the other thing is, my question to Mr. Fuller is, the white folks that say, I'm not racist, and I know up here in Seattle, Washington, we have just a little bit of guilt, just a little bit. So white people do try to go out of their way to do things for people of color. But when you have those people that say, I'm not racist, but they reap all the benefits of the system, what's the argument for that? What do you say? Thank you.
I'll say what the code always says, and I'd repeat, that's why I wrote a code that you stick to if you choose to do so. It's all optional. Everything that I write is optional, naturally, because it would have to be, and it should be, based on your own logic. So I say that any white person who is able to be a racist probably is one, but you never call a white person a racist, or anybody else for that matter. Never call a person a racist unless the person says that he or she is a racist. The person, him or herself, says, I am a racist. If the person says, I'm not a racist, then the code kicks in and says, are you white? And if the person says, I am a white person, I'm classified as white, then you say, well, that person probably could be one, most likely is one, if he or she is able to be one. Now, if the person is not able to be one, then the person naturally is not one. I mean, but if the person knows the difference between one color and another, you should suspect that person as being a racist, but never call the person a racist. You can say that the person is a racist suspect. That's the term that I use in the textbook. And if the person says, well, why should you suspect me of being a racist? And you say, simply because I don't have any reason to believe you're not one. You say, well, I just told you I'm not one. Say, yes, but racists are deceitful. Racists are deceitful. They say things that are not true all the time. So you say that you are not a racist, but I am duty bound as a victim of racism to suspect that you still could be one. And maybe sometime in the future I will determine that you should no longer be on my suspicion list. But only I can determine that. And of course, that's what I do. I don't put anything in the book that I don't advocate for somebody else, because I say what I put there is based on logic, not based on this Neely Fuller's emotions and whatnot. And I do have emotions, but I try to put down in writing everything that's based on logic, because logic came with the universe. It was created by the Creator. And when you follow logic, because I think that's what the Creator of all people put logic in the universe for. Logic meaning cause and effect. When you study that and stick with it and take your emotions out of it, if it's undermining logic, it should take you right where you need to go, whether you want to go there or not. I don't want to suspect a white person as being a racist just because I'm looking at the person and the person has white skin and the person says that they are classified as white. I don't want to do that emotionally, but I'm duty bound to say in a system of white supremacy, somebody's got to be a racist. And I don't have a master list of who is and who isn't. So logic tells me I should say, and sell it to the world, sir, ma'am, I suspect you could be one. Why? Because I have no reason to suspect that you are not. None.
All right. 800-450-7876. Betty Jean's been holding for a while in D.C. on line 4. Betty Jean, can you make it quick for us?
Yes, I'm Betty Jean. I'm going to make it quick. I just want to ask your guest, does he have any friends who are white?
The answer is no.
Okay.
Because there are no such thing as friends in the system of white supremacy. That's a myth. The white supremacy.
I have to cut you because we're just about flat out of time. I thank you. Neely Fuller Jr., real quick, how can we get the book?
You can go to producejustice.com, but what you will get is just a sign saying temporarily out of stock, and that's producejustice.com. But you keep checking that site, and within a couple of weeks, and maybe less, I hope it'll be less, a couple of weeks, it should be off and running, and you can get the book. That's producejustice.com.
All right, thanks. Folks, I may apologize to all the folks who couldn't get in because there was a bunch of folks trying to speak to Neely Fuller Jr. We'll do it again shortly, and you'll get a chance to speak to him. But I want you to stay strong, stay positive, always, always stay in the light. See you tomorrow.